Welcome to Behind the Catch Fence. I'm your host, David Hoffman. It's a big month of racing in NASCAR between the All-Star Race and the famed Coca-Cola 600. Well, who better to talk about those marquee events than with a legend who's won them both? Joining us today is NASCAR Hall of Famer and probably one of the coolest guys you ever meet, Mark Martin. Mark, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. Great to be with you.
Always great to have you on. Obviously, yeah, we got a big month ahead with All-Star Race, Coke 600. Looking at it, obviously when you were competing for a long time in both races, how would you describe that whole month and when you're driving and knowing that these two huge events are back to back?
Well, racing, that's the home race. And it was really, in that era, it was my favorite racetrack as well. So, one of my favorites, I would say. Not the favorite, but one of my favorites. And it was a home race. And when you're just going and grinding every week, it's nice to race 2 weeks right at home. So, it was a great event. Both events were just uh, epic. It was just a great time.
And you mentioned with it kind of being, I guess, a homecoming in a way, because you have those couple weekends where you're just kind of chilling there. Obviously, we have the like there's fan days and all this other stuff, and it seems like its own little cool things. How would you describe the vibe around it with, fan interaction and just having all these separate, cool events that are going on?
Well, for most of my NASCAR career, that was what All-Star Race and the 600 really was 2 weeks of our mini speed weeks right at home. So um, it was uh, it was always something we look forward to, not only because it's a great facility, but the fan response was awesome, and to be able to win in front of a lot of the people that worked on these race cars, their families never got to go to any races, and they'd get to come out and uh, you know, see the guys in action, their cars in action, the guys on pit road in action, and everything else. So, just for a lot of reasons, it gave you a warm feeling.
And we'll start before we get to the All-Star race. We'll start with the Coke 600. When you won it there back in 2002, I was watching it the other day. You had one heck of a battle there at the end with your teammate Matt Kenseth. He was, barreling down on you, but you ended up squeaking away there at the end with lap traffic and everything. After nearly 600 miles of just nonstop racing, no stage stuff or anything like that, how do you manage that last little bit and get the absolute best out of yourself, even though you're probably as, worn out as can be.
Well, my foundation was built before I got to NASCAR. My foundation was built on ASA, American Speed Association, and almost all their races were 2, 3, and 400 lap races. So I was a teenager running long races and figuring out racecraft and managing your race. And um, the only thing that really ever mattered, especially when you were racing to make ends meet, was the last 50 laps and where you finished. That's when the pay window opens. So you know, I had I had a lot of experience racing long races and strategizing on how to put your best foot forward after the last pit stop, because that's when the brutal racing, really the slugfest, really happens after the last pit stop. And so I was by 2002, I was certainly 12, 14 years into my physical fitness program. So I was probably at one of my peaks as far as that goes, physically and mentally. I had a lot of experience. So um, you just put it all together. That's back in that era. That's what it was all about. It's where you finished. Being able to go toe to toe with anybody for that last 50 laps or so.
And after winning the race, you did something I don't think I've ever seen you do any other time. You did a little celebratory, a little donuts to the infield. What prompted that from you? Obviously, you've been more of a guy that just does like the victory lap and says hi to the fans, and everything else. Is what was going on through your mind to do something like that?
Well, I would never do a burnout. So that was my version of a burnout, something that's really easy on the equipment. Um, in my era, especially coming up, your equipment wasn't bulletproof. And I owned my own cars for a lot of years, and so I had a great appreciation. Not only did I build my own cars or help build my own cars or help maintain them, but I paid for them too. So I had a great appreciation for that, for equipment, and it was really exciting to pull that race off because I hadn't won the year before, and it was looking like my days of winning races was behind me. And I was with a new group of guys in 2002. Ben Leslie and all the team were really young. They were really excited, and Ben had it figured out. Um, how he was going to. We're going to win that $1 million. When we got in the Winston million thing, or the whatever it was, the No Bull 5 thing, when we got in that, he called me up and he says, "Hey man, we're gonna I got wind tunnel time. I'm gonna build you a car with the nose on it like I know you want. Build, you like your cars loose, you like a lot of front downforce. I'm gonna build you a car. I've got testing set up. We're gonna test, and we're gonna go win that $1 million." And not only did they do all that, but they practiced and practiced and practiced their pit stops. And their last pit stop, I think I came in running third and went out leading. So all those things, you know, just combined for a euphoric feeling. Most of the guys in that picture in that Victory Lane picture had never been to Victory Lane. It was their first time, or at least in cup racing. And so it was one heck of a win and very exciting for all of us.
And we talked about sort of the physical aspect, and obviously you've been used to running 400 miles in ASA and that sort of thing. And I'm curious, when you first started competing in the 600s, was there any, I guess, part that was sort of difficult or felt like you needed to work on something like in like the weight room or whatever that may be, or was this sort of like business as usual?
It was just a long race. I know in 1982, um, the first 600 I ran, my car was terrible. I had some problems with the car, and I was hot on fire, and I just got out. I got out of the car because we were having such a horrible day. Um, Fast forward to 1988, it was a whole different story. I had better race cars. I had already started my physical fitness program. Um, I was just in a lot better shape, and 600 miles was no different than 500 miles to me. Everybody said, "How do you prepare for that?" or whatever. It's like, dude, it's the same as any other race. After lap one, it's 399 to go. I mean, I didn't view it as any different than any other race. As soon as you made one lap, it was X amount to go, and you raced your race so that you would be um, the most ferocious after the last pit stop to the checkered flag.
I'm curious, we mentioned about endurance and being in very good physical shape. I know you didn't really, obviously, really have any open wheel experience. In your prime, would do you think you could have been able to, if you had the correct time and time inside like an Indy car, would you think you'd be able to do that 1100 double like Larson's doing for a second straight year?
Physically, I could, but I don't know. You know, I have no idea how I would have got along with a Indy car. Um, my career started being built in the late 70s on sliding car control and getting that last 2 or 3 tenths out of a race car in a slide. You don't do that in Indy cars. Um, I suspect that I would have hurt myself in an Indy car before it was all said and done with. So for that reason, I passed on opportunities to drive them.
Well, yeah, obviously it worked out for you on the NASCAR side of things. You mentioned the No Bull 5 a little bit ago and winning the extra $1 million. You've kind of had the unique opportunity of winning $1 million in both the All-Star race and the Coke 600s. I mean, it's a cool headline to say, driver won $1 million, but how much of that does the driver actually end up getting after everything's sort of divided up?
Well, I wanted to win so badly in 2002 that when Ben told me, what all he was going to do, I said, and I will share half of my part of the money with you guys. So the guys on my team all enjoyed half of of my take on that night. So, it wasn't a windfall for me by any means. Uh, the All-Star race, because it was at the toward the end of my career. I didn't do that. We also won in 2005. We also won the IROC championship and didn't have to split that with anyone. So I have all three of the $1 million cars, all three of the cars I won $1 million with, which is pretty cool. And um, they're in the museum in Batesville. So I think that's pretty cool. Also have my first win car, and I have my last win car from uh, uh, from Loudon in 2009. I don't know how long it'll ever be before it's restored, but I have the car and it is in the works. So someday that badass number 5 Kellogg's CarQuest car will be. I've even Alan Gustafson even got me the setup sheet, so I even have the setup to put under it, and it will be a running period correct, the real deal car.
I was gonna say that was the one thing I tell my wife all the time. I'm like, when we eventually go to Arkansas, we got to go to Martin Automotive just because all the cars you have in there, and that's just. Aren't you working? Is JR10 complete? I think, right?
Yeah, so we're redoing JR10. It was in the Stroh's Light livery, like we got their first win with at Rockingham in 1989, but um, it wasn't perfect. Almost all of these cars are not right. I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about everybody's. All these milestone cars, they went on to live another life after they won a particular race. And so when they get put back, they don't get put. It's really hard to get them right. So long story short, Matt is has got that car in the works. He's going to put it back like the last win it got, which was Phoenix '93. And that car will break the internet when it's finished. It should be finished this summer sometime, and it'll be incredible. But yeah, we have 10, we have JR51 that we won 4 races with in '98. It is definitely 100% period correct. But the thing like with JR10, it won in '89 Stroh's Light. It won in '91 as a Folgers car. It won in '93 as a Valvoline car. It was in '94 and '95. It was hauled in the top of the truck as a backup car. So the body was updated from '89 to '91 to '93 to '94 to '95. So you have to take back all that back out. You have to take the roof flaps out, the cowl flaps out, and you know put all the things back to get it correct. And all the decals have to be right. It's got to be exactly right, or it's not right. So it's pretty painstaking to get these things back exactly like they were.
Obviously, it works out, and it's probably the one of the coolest things you can see is when it's fully done, and you're able to heck even take it out for a little spin too. Um, a final couple questions for me. Talking about the All-Star race a little bit ago, your win in '98 there was a pretty wild one. Obviously, you had just passed Bobby Labonte for second place. Last lap, Jeff Gordon seemingly runs out of fuel or something. You end up kind of sneaking by, winning that first time. What
There's a
was it?
lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that story. In '98, people don't realize. that Ray Evernham was very aggressive, and he only put enough fuel in the car to finish the race on the last stop, and nobody could touch Jeff Gordon. He was gone from here. However, we had a restart, and he jumped the restart, and they called it back, and that burned up his fuel. So he cost himself. Everybody, wants to point it at Ray or the gas man or whatever, but in effect, he also cost himself that race. Had he not been, they jacked around, getting us lined up and in the right spot and getting us back going. And if that hadn't happened, he would have had enough fuel to win the race. But yeah, I work and work and work Bobby Labonte, and just coming off of four, finally get under Bobby, and I'm working on the pass there, coming up off of four, and I see Gordon pull down to the inside, coasting. It's crazy. I thought it's not over, is it? And couldn't figure out what was going on. But those wins when you don't know they're coming are the most exciting. It was a really fun night.
I can imagine, especially you go from here to all of a sudden like, holy crap, we're actually gonna we're actually gonna win this thing. Um, yeah, then you obviously were able to win again in '05. That was a cool one, being able to run like a throwback paint scheme from '93 of the Valvoline car. Uh, with it being one of your last wins with Jack Roush, how special was that to celebrate with him and have that cool opportunity to take an old paint scheme and bring it back out into victory lane?
Well, it was so great. I mean, the paint job was just so awesome. That 93, 94, 95 livery with Valvoline was epic and iconic. Uh, it seemed like the fans were really fired up that night, and I was really uh, I made every move I made on the racetrack turned out to be the right move. Not because I was smart, because I made the moves all the time. The moves I made turned out to be right based on what other drivers did. So it felt really slick to me because every time I went for a hole or I went to make a pass or made a move, that move turned out to be the right one. And it's pretty fun when it all lines up and works out because so many of the times it doesn't. And and so I was really proud of my drive that night. I didn't particularly have, hands down best race car. I had a great race car, good race car, but things on the racetrack, the moves I made just happened to be the right ones each time I made a decision that it turned out right. And usually you're not able to put a string of them in a row like I was that night, but it was uh it was big. It was a big win.
Especially for your career as well, because I know you'd announced your retirement tour, and then eventually you did come back for Roush for another year and everything. Obviously, we know the rest of the story. How much of I guess, a factor was that win? And maybe I know you'd said after the race, if they'll give me a car, I'll be right back here at the All-Star race. Was that like a big factor in you coming back again for a full season, or was it already kind of really much in the works?
No, yeah, I wanted to do a limited cup schedule. I just had no interest in running the full schedule. Um, and I had lobbied extremely hard to get Jamie McMurray in the six car for 2006. I worked really hard at that. It was not easy to get that done, but because Jack didn't tend to hire successful drivers, he hired little guys that wanted it real bad. And if you look at it, Jamie's the only one he ever hired, that that had a record, a successful record in Cup to any degree. So I got that deal done. They got it done, and then Kurt bounced uh, unexpectedly, and that left them in a jam. Left Roush in a jam. So instead of putting Jamie in the six car, they put Jamie in the '97, and I stayed another year. I did it out of loyalty uh, to the company that made my career, that gave me the opportunity when no one else would, and that's why I stayed another year.
Hmm. Obviously, it ended up working out. You had a couple fun seasons there. Eventually, there in '09 and everywhere else with Hendrick, which we've talked about before. Final question for me. We got we're heading back to North Wilkesboro again. I think it's the third year for Cup in the All-Star race. How would you assess their return there? And I know there was talk of, NASCAR, saying, hey, you can run what you brung, but that obviously didn't work out. You feel, what are your thoughts on, I guess, that whole thing and, and what the All-Star race is looking like going forward?
Well, I think we need to give the racetrack a little bit of a chance. I don't think that last year's race, represented what we'll see from there forever. Pavement like that, new pavement's not generally not very good to race on for quite some time. Sometimes it takes years for it to really come around. It's a great racetrack. It's a great facility. It's fantastic to see them bring it back. Um, I hated to see it go. I think it's a very important racetrack to NASCAR and the NASCAR fans. Um, I see both sides of the uh, run what you brung thing. I think it's a fantastic idea to let the teams do whatever they want to their cars. But but we're racers, and racers can't quit. They're like drug addicts, and no one would stop at any length to make their cars better. And pretty soon the cars wouldn't be the next gen cars. I mean, they'd just be Oswego super modifieds. I mean, if you're not going to if run what you brung, first thing you need to do is call up somebody up in the Northeast and get one of those super mods. I mean, don't bring a cup car. The idea of it is great. Let the guys do whatever they want to do to make the car go as fast as they can, but try to resemble what the car is now. But racers can't do that. You have to put racers in a box. And so it's disappointing, but that's where we're at. That's why we have so many rules today. And 40 years ago, we had so many less rules. It was way better when you had less rules. Nobody got disqualified. Nobody, won the race and then lost the race and all that. It was a lot better. But when racers do their thing and they work where there's a gray area, then you have to make a rule on that gray area. And you keep making a rule and making a rule, and you have to. It's the same thing with grassroots racing. That's out of control too. Those guys win these high profile late model races and they get disqualified all the time. Or they got to spend a day or two to go through tech. You know, I don't like that, but I don't know. There is not much of a solution to it. The late model dirt cars do a good job. They have some rules, um, and they're able to show up at a racetrack on any given race night, get 3 laps of practice, line up and qualify, and race and go home. And they don't tear much up. They don't wreck each other. They don't run over each other very much. They have a great formula, but it's hard to apply that same formula to um, the pavement guys because the culture is so different.
And it's just one of those things where you could say all these different things, have all these different ideas, but there's so many different hurdles to jump through and trying to figure out a good kind of medium in between. But it'll be interesting to kind of see maybe what they end up doing next year or how they maybe adjust the next gen car and horsepower and whatever else. That's a whole different discussion. But Mark, I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, for people watching, you guys can make sure to go check out markmartinarchive.com. You can check, for latest cool merch and diecast cars. You can go get You can go follow Mark Martin Archive on Instagram. A lot of cool things that his son Matt's doing on there. It's a must follow for sure. But Mark, always a pleasure talking with you, and hopefully, we can talk again here soon.
Look forward to it. I appreciate you.